Saw.
Members of the City Council, my name is George Christopher. I live at 945 Painted Budding Lane, Vero Beach, Florida. I had decided not to attend this meeting. I was home with my wife. I decided not to attend because, frankly, I didn't think I had anything positive to add. The mayor, city manager, city attorney had a very serious meeting. They attempted to move the ball forward. They attempted to find a path forward. And frankly, I didn't think I had anything to add, so I thought rather than show up and be a lightning rod, I'd sit home. But then, blatant lies I heard on the television set from the gentleman back there in the corner with his arms folded, looking smug. And frankly, I got mad. My wife got very mad. Put that aside. You're fortunate she's not up here. If we had a dog, I'm sure the dog would have been furious.
Mr. Christopher, we have microphone problems again.
Yeah, why don't you get the handheld mic, George?
Thanks, Craig.
Is this better? No. Not better?
No, never go.
You think Mr. Wilson got a hold of the mics?
I think it's Mayor probably.
It got cut off while he was speaking, so I
Is this better?
Worked out.
There we are. I want to stay calm. I want to stay focused. But enough. Enough. There's a deal on the table. It will result in lowering our rates if we can accomplish it. Everybody in their right minds is for it. If we can get there, there are problems. I have never opposed the sale. I've been very critical at the process, as you, Mrs. Turner, know, and you, Mr. Fletcher, know. But that's reasonable men can disagree. Let me start with the RNA. It's been maligned repeatedly by Mr. Wilson. Totally inappropriate. Shaking your head no doesn't make lies truthful. The IRNA has been in existence for 10 years. It's an organization of citizens seriously concerned about the well-being of the county and the cities. It has worked hard, very hard. They're activists, they're concerned, they volunteered to serve on public bodies, they run for office. I don't know a group that's done more on the lagoon than the IRNA committee. Mrs. Turner, you make a face, you may disagree, but believe me, we invite you to our lagoon meetings. I don't chair it, I'm not there, but the people that are there are serious, they're committed, they're focused on the lagoon and what we can do to improve the situation there. We focused on the rail issue. It's a difficult issue. We brought together people from all over the county. We've exchanged ideas. We've taken a position. We've taken it civilly. Perhaps you disagree with it, but it's been taken with the intent of serving the county and the city and its people. Most recently, we've been involved in the Gifford matter. We appeared and supported Gifford in trying to deal with some zoning issues he had. We were very much involved in the dog park. Perhaps controversial, but we were there. And we've been there for the last 10 years, and this isn't George Christopher that's been there. This has been multiple people. The kind of organization that does not deserve to be demeaned by the likes of Mr. Wilson. Now, and let me add also, we're headed up by an executive director, Dan Lamson, who's as wonderful a young man as you'll find, and who believes in the city and believes in the county and stands up before you and expresses his viewpoints. There's no need for attack. None. Disagree, that's legitimate. All right, I didn't hear everything that Mr. Wilson said. So if you want to ask me about some of the things he asserted that I didn't hear, I'd be glad to comment. But blatant lie, 100 telephone calls. My records show 3 calls. Now, one of the council members said, well, Charlie stretches. From 3 to 100? That's not a stretch. 3 calls, I forget now. 1 was for 1 minute and 2 were for 2 minutes. Or 2 were for 1 minute and 1 was for 2 minutes. Them are the 100 calls. Now, be clear. Have I made calls to FMPA? Yes. Have I talked to that evil man, Fred Bryant? Yes. What was my purpose? My purpose was to explore, is there some path forward? The council had determined a path of trying to back FMPA down, threaten lawsuits, go to Tallahassee. Maybe it would work. It wasn't you were acting in bad faith, but it didn't seem to me to be working. So I was calling to say, just what are your problems? How do you get around them? What are your paths that you see? What's acceptable to you? The documents that I produced, 90% of them were emails from the so-called transactional attorneys. Another 5% were letters that FMPA produced 2-3 years ago that are on the public record multiple times. There were a few records from you, Mrs. Turner. I don't know how they got there, but they were there. And then there was response to a request I made, 3 responses. I asked for the names of lawyers who were versed in electric utility law. I also asked for the names of litigation lawyers. I got 3 emails. 1 recommending 2 of the finest firms in Atlanta. 1 recommending 6 lawyers in Florida. And litigation lawyers, 3, one of whom practices in Vero Beach. As I recall, in all cases, those recommendations came from outside counsel to FMPA. I made it explicit I didn't want any counsel that ever had done work for FMPA. And that information I have shared with nobody other than Mr. Wilson. He is the first person to whom I shared that information. I received it, I stored it for a rainy day. Now, if I did, you can't get there. Did I do something inappropriate? Did I do something wrong? It's not there. It's not there. I'm acting as a citizen of the city of Vero Beach, concerned with the interests of the city of Vero Beach. I am tired of being personally attacked. I am tired of it. If he has backup, 100 calls. Show me 4. I acknowledge 3, totaling either 5 minutes or 3 minutes. I also acknowledge I made calls, but let me tell you, I don't have that kind of time, 100 calls. I did make some more calls, a few more.
Wow.
And calls that anybody could have made, I might add. It's amazing. FMPA responds to calls. They have a public information law. You ask them a question, they say, we'll send you our documents. And at no time did we talk about anything other than the path forward. Now, I'd be pleased to answer, Craig, you're staring at me. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have, Craig, or Mrs. Turner has, or the mayor has.
Good evening, Mr. Christopher. First of all, please correct. I am well aware of IRNA and some of the great work, so I certainly didn't mean to be supporting their work, particularly on the lagoon and the other efforts. I will acknowledge as a very pro-electric sail candidate that I was supported by IRNA, so I think any claim saying that you are opposed to the electric sail would be a little futile if you're going to support a candidate who obviously has had no qualms about having a consistent stance on that. That being said, however, could I ask, why would you ask FMPA for names of lawyers?
I'll tell you why, because I thought at some point down the line that might be necessary. It'd be good information. I like information, Mrs. Turner. I asked him for documents. Fred would.
I don't have any problem with that. But
Fred would say X, Y, Z. I'd say, you have any documents to back that up? Let me see them. I practiced law for 40 years. I started as a young lawyer, and I'd work. And I'd call the Justice Department, and I'd say, hey, tell me about this. How do you do this? How do you get this merger past the antitrust laws? Help me out here. And what kind of documents can you give me? I said to FMPA, we may be talking, I don't know, the city down the line may be talking about a utility authority. They said, well, we've done some research on that. I said, will you share it with me? Now, until I was asked by the Utility Commission, well, actually I wasn't asked until I went to the Utility Commission, I held it to myself. They sent me a model statute. Why would I want a model statute for a utility authority? Because it could be of value, or it couldn't be. It depends how you use it. I haven't used any of that stuff. Not even Mr. Winger is aware of the names of the lawyers. And now Mr. O'Connor is there. You're shaking your head. You don't believe that?
No, sir. I believe what you said. I just don't feel like you're addressing my question.
What's your question?
My original question was, why would you call FMPA and ask for the name of lawyers?
You're making an assumption. That being that I only called FMPA to ask for that information. That assumption is not well-founded.
Fine, sir, but I'm still looking for an answer to my question.
I happened to call two other sources for names of lawyers. And so your assumption is not well-founded. And I wouldn't, if it was an issue, that's only the beginning. You don't get a lawyer by getting FMPA to make a suggestion of lawyers. You vent them. You find out what they've done. You find out what their capabilities are. It's a list is how you use it, Mrs. Turner, and that list hasn't been used. It was just raw information.
But why would you think that we would be looking for an attorney?
Oh, you got to be serious.
It was a serious question, sir.
Oh, you got to be serious. Okay, I can't answer that question if you can't. Mr. Winger, Mr. Mayor, if there's anything else that was said about me that I can address, I'd be pleased to do so.
Well, my remembrance as a service to you, the public, was there was the claim of the 100 telephone calls, and the only other thing I heard was there was a bunch of documents. I think I've seen most of the documents. They were all public records, you said. I was not aware of the lawyer conversation before this evening, so I didn't hear anything else. You apparently answered the questions. Would you agree?
You've got this lawyer thing. If that's the straw that you have to grasp to attack either me or the IRNA, God bless you. It's a straw that has no substance. Asking a Florida lawyer who is knowledgeable in utility law and get 8 law firms recommended, 2 of the finest Atlanta law firms in the country. I'm sorry. And it's information that I wanted, and there's certainly no suggestion that I shouldn't have asked for it, is there?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. What next?
Public comment, finish it up.
No need for that language.
Welcome.
Good evening.
You'll
Thank
need
you
to
very
use the
much.
microphone there.
Oh,
And yeah, sorry.
good evening.
You might have
turn it
turned it
off.
off.
Good evening. I'm Rosemary
That's good.
B. Wilson, 1490 Fifth Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. I joined the IRNA early on and was very, very disappointed with their conduct, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm no longer affiliated with them. However, under these circumstances, I would suggest to the City Council, since you all named Mr. George Christopher to the Utilities Commission, that he be removed from the Utilities Commission for unethical behavior in dealing with FMPA and for interference in ongoing contract negotiations. You have transactional attorneys. I don't understand what he's trying to do. Is it interference or is it not? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Who else would like to comment? Mrs. Manous?
Does this work?
No,
No, he's
No.
good. You'll have to use
Does it work now?
Yeah.
I guess you just have to get up close and personal.
it's the right touch, honey.
It's the ladies' touch.
Good evening, Council. I'm Honey Manous. I live here in the city of Vero Beach at 27 Starfish Drive. My comments are my own. I do take exception to the good work of the IRNA and how it's been attacked, but that's for another time. This morning I was watching the County Commission meeting on television. I was very disturbed by Commissioner Zork's comments. He is organizing a protest for the next FMPA meeting. He said his intent was to have these protesters outside the building so that the FMPA participants had to walk through this crowd to get inside the building, and he intends for the protesters to have an impact. Granted, that's his prerogative, but there's 2 problems here. First, he's riling up people using information that is not correct. He lays all the blame on FMPA. He said that today at the commission meeting, and as you know, this is not correct. The fact is the city has contracts, which makes this sale difficult. The contracts are legal, they're binding, in particular to the Oil Requirements Project. I've said it before standing up here. We are exactly in the same situation we were in when this sale first started years ago. We're obligated to those contracts, and every member city has to vote unanimously to let us out. So that's the first problem, the misinformation. The second problem gets to a little bit more of the heart of what's going on in our community, and it's the negative behavior, the strategy, and the constant attacks. It's old, it's tired, and it's just like the venom that gets spewed up here at every single meeting. Gets us nowhere, got us nowhere with getting out of the sale, getting out of our contracts, and it continues to create ill will. Repeating this behavior is not going to advance the sale of the electric utility. It's only going to worsen the relationships that we have with FMPM members, and it's going to set us further back. We need goodwill to negotiate. And I'm going to suggest that Council needs an agreeable representation on FMPA. We need to be seen in a positive light so that we can work together towards solutions to allow the sale to proceed. And I say that with all due respect to Mrs. Turner, who has been absolutely passionate about this sale for a very long time. But her approach hasn't worked. It hasn't been acceptable to FMPA and the members. Council, we need an approach that is acceptable to the other member cities, and I'm going to suggest that that approach has to be a positive one. Please consider a policy directed at that approach. Commissioner Zork is going to do as he will, and he will have his followers, but I honestly believe that that behavior is going to further hurt our position at FMPA, and it will foster more ill will. We need their cooperation, not their animosity. Please consider this change in policy, send a positive message, tell them by your actions that we want this sale, and we want to work with you to make it happen. And Mayor Winger, I'd like to thank you very much for earlier during this meeting referencing that video that's posted. I think if more people were to see that video, they would be dealing with facts and not subscribing to the misinformation that's being cast around. And I do suggest that you post it on the website. People will have access to accurate information. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Bocher.
We'll see if it works for me. Oh, I shouldn't have touched it. Mark Mucher, 617 Indian Lilac Road. I was just sitting there observing all this fun, and it came to me that it used to be clear there were pro-sale people and anti-sale people. There was yes on the referendum and there's no on the referendum. But what I've come to realize is what we've got today is we've got people who are for the sale and we've got people who say they're for the sale. But the people who are for the sale are looking out for the residents of Vero Beach and the customers of Vero Electric. And the people who are against the sale or say they're for the sale and are looking out for the interest of FMPA. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Well, I'm hopeful that that's it. Oh, here's a gentleman who wants to speak. Come forward, sir.
Hello. I actually wasn't going to speak today. Stephen George is 746 19th Place because my voice might not hold up. I'm new to this city. I'm new to the council.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. And I am very confused. One of the reasons I moved here is because my parents have been here for about 10 years. And they've both been hospitalized over the last year. And I'm also here for a business reason, but that'll have to wait. I'll announce that next time. I have a simple question, okay? So bear with me. Who owns the Vero Beach utility assets? Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. You address questions to me or the city manager.
I've been watching.
Thank you. The voters or the people of Vero Beach own the assets.
The ratepayers, yeah.
Well, that's not really true.
The city of Vero Beach.
The city of Vero Beach owns the utility, and it owns it on behalf of the people of Vero Beach, whether they're voters or not.
Okay. So my parents own some property in Vero Beach, and at some point I'll probably be responsible for selling it. What I'll do is contact my attorney, real estate agent. We'll come up with a fair appraisal, and I'll say these are the terms I will agree with. And then we'll start the negotiation from those terms. So whoever wants to purchase the property or is involved in the sale will counter my terms. And what I'm confused at is because I keep hearing about this long, drawn-out process is have the terms that represent what the ratepayers want have been brought forth, and have they been countered? And I know I'm simplifying this, and please excuse me, but I keep hearing about additional issues or things that are on the table and off the table, and that's not how business negotiation, personal negotiations, government negotiations are run.
Let me help you with that. I'll try to help you with that.
Okay.
If the piece of property that you're talking about, if it had mortgages on it, obligations on it, then you'd have to solve those obligations. In the case of the electric company, there are a group of 4 contracts, 3 of one kind, 1 of another, and the revenue from the system, the poles, the transformers, is used to pay an obligation. So the problem is it's not this simple, but the problem is it's like you have a mortgage and you got to satisfy the people that you have a mortgage with.
Correct.
I mean, does that help, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Not only that, it's like getting a third or fourth mortgage. We have a lot of mortgages to settle. It's a really complex sale.
We besides FMPA, we also have an obligation to OUC also.
Just for trying to, again, be simplistic like you, because that's the whole effort in this, to try to get it to where the average person can understand. The bottom line is the city of Vero Beach has pledged 34,000 ratepayers against purchase power contracts. We have said as long as Stanton 2, and St. Lucie plant generate power, our 34,000 customers will buy power from those plants.
Okay.
And so we have those obligations that we've got to get out of. The group that we have those contracts with, which is FMPA, we do have OUC because they actually run the Stanton. But let's make it simple. Our contract with FMPA says our 34,000 customers will buy power from those plants for as long as they're in existence. FMPA is saying you've pledged 34,000 customers. Now you're going to sell those 34,000 customers to a third party. So we'll be minus 34,000 customers to purchase power.
Okay.
In this particular time in history, we have a high supply and a low demand. So from FMPA's standpoint, they're losing 34,000 people who are forced to buy that power from those plants that we're going to sell to FMPA, to FP&L.
Okay.
And so our power supply contracts, what we're saying is that we're going to sell our power supply contracts to another utility. In this particular case, we're talking to Orlando Utilities Commission. They will buy the power contracts, but not the customers. And so FMPA is saying that is not enough security for us, because even though OUC may get those, OUC could go bankrupt tomorrow. And we have taken the position that, well, we could go bankrupt tomorrow. So, but they're saying, but you still have the 34,000 customers. That's really where in my opinion, is where the real issue is. And when we signed those contracts several years ago and pledged those 34,000 customers, deep inside of those contracts are provisions. You will never sell your utility to anyone other than a qualified FMPA system. So we could sell it to OUC, we could sell it to Jacksonville, we could sell it to Lakeland. But when the contracts were signed, that provision was in there that said, and didn't contemplate, is I think the way we're discussing it now, going to a private system and taking those customers out of the purchase power business through FMPA. So we've got to be able to convince FMPA we're going to give enough security to remove those 34,000 customers. Coming back to your analogy of your house, that's sort of like if Bank of America holds the mortgage.
Correct.
And you're underwater. And, you know, they've come out with this creative thing where they call it, where you go to your mortgage lender and say, well, this is the best buyer I can get.
Short sale.
Short sale. Yeah, and then you have to pay on and on and on. And you know, they just have you under a contract. And those are the type of concepts, using that, your analogy to what we have. And what we're doing is that we have pledged 34,000 customers that we want to sell to another utility.
Okay, so I kind of understand that, but my issue is at a higher level.
Okay.
And because again, I'm just an outsider listening. If I'm getting ready to sell some of the property that my family has, I'll contact Bank of America, first lien holder, Wells Fargo, second lien holder. What are your terms? What's required? Because I have to have that before I can actually go to the public and say the property is for sale.
See, they can quantify. You're asking for a quantified number.
But can I just say
Sorry.
this?
Okay.
If it's not possible to get a quantification, it's not possible to sell the property.
And that's where we are.
So my confusion is, this is all either wasted effort, and we should actually, I'll be nice to FP&L, let them go their way, or we get these issues quantified.
Well, we thought we had them quantified when they had the 52 million.
Correct. I'm trying not to make a comment, more ask questions, because I'm a student here. I'm learning. So my question is, not in year 1, 2, 3, 4, are we putting together a framework that's quantified, that's documented, that says, here are all of the lien holders' requirements, public who wants to buy these assets, here are the requirements that you need to meet. Are we doing that?
That is what we are attempting to do right now.
And Jim, isn't that what we were attempting to do? The three of us.
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do, is to get that quantifiable term. And we did get two numbers. Now, we've broken this up into two elements. One is the stranded costs and the other is contingent liabilities. But we were able to get two of what I think is going to be three numbers. And again, from FMPA. In the contingent liability area, the problem is they will not give us a quantifiable, they will not give us a number. They used the example, which has got validity.
Okay.
Duke Energy purchased Florida Power Corp, the system. And part of that purchase was the Crystal River 2 nuclear plant. The next thing you find is a crack in the plant. So for environmental issues, they have to take that plant offline and decommission it. That decommissioning could take in excess of 50 years. So you can't go out and buy an insurance policy that says, well, it could take 50 years, could take 60 years. So you don't have a quantifiable. What our attempts have been to this point is to try to get those quantifiable values and have pledges. For example, we have offered the franchise fee as it relates to electric. We've offered the utility tax. We've offered to go out and get a bond, and what is the number that we need to get a bond, or a contract insurance policy, and trying to figure out. But the issue from FMPA standpoint is they say there is no quantifiable amount. So they need to have a pledge from an ongoing entity. Their latest offer that I think FP&L has taken a position they cannot honor at this time is a pledge that FPL would underwrite this whole deal long term. Now, there would be elements in between FP&L and the underwriting. For example, our contract with OUC for the purchase power, so they stand good as long as they're in existence. Then you would have our pledge of the franchise and the utility tax plus maybe a bond that we would purchase.
Okay.
And then after that paid off, then FP&L would be the backstop to all that is what is envisioned right now with FMPA. What we're going to try to do now is go back to FMPA and say, okay, we can't get that corporate pledge. What else can we do? What is another security mechanism to meet that requirement?
Okay. Just a quick question. On the first two numbers, do you have a bind-in agreement on the first two numbers?
Only from the minutes that they have actually signed on to. Yes, we do have those.
So the minutes
and by contract
are binding on the first two numbers that you have?
I think they are binding, yes, sir. They're as binding as anything that we've got to this point. in the fact that it is in writing now.
Okay, can I make a comment that before you move on to the more complicated issue, you get documented approval contract on your first two numbers.
But we actually need three.
I understand that. I said before the third issue because my confusion is that their issues keep coming up, and there's a lot of energy from the community and the council that's being expended on this. I'll leave it at that. So you have a third number that you need to nail down, or
For the stranded cost.
it's more of an example of there's a crack in, if I was in Georgia, in my basement, and I need to sell the property, but I don't know the complete potential for that crack, right, in the basement. But I need to come to some agreement. It can't be that I'm going to be liable for that crack till the new owner passes away or something, right? So we have to come to some agreement as how much or what is required to mitigate the potential. So we need to come up with this third number. Okay. So that kind of helps me, but I would, if you could, it seems like, maybe, I don't know what the community feels, but if you could come back on those first two numbers at least, so we can say this is what we have in agreement. I don't know how a minutes are binding, and then you can tackle the third number. But it helps a little bit of my confusion.
Thank you
counsel.
so much.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think it's a useful conversation. And besides the two numbers, there are documents involving the various four parties, OUC, Florida Power and Light, FMPA, and OUC. And all of those documents have to be worded in a way that they're acceptable to whoever's party to those. And we have some documents also that FMPA is a party to that they're not agreeable with the wording. I really think we can work the wording out. I don't.
Yeah, that's almost like a closing attorney. We can, as long as we have an agreement that we're moving the sale forward.
No, your point's valid.
Right, we can deal with the
valid.
language of a closing attorney. But my confusion and coming in as an outsider and trying to educate myself is that I would not even bring this to FPL. I would not, because there's nothing here to bring to an outside. I would not list this as for public sale because I don't have the terms. I mean, is that correct?
No, FPL has been pushing this. So I mean, they're the ones that have.
But no, that's not my question. I own my property, and the rate holders own the property, and I believe you guys are representative.
That's correct,
gentlemen. So forget about them. What are the terms that is acceptable to the rate holders? And then you bring that to the other parties, and that's negotiated. And I'm taking up enough of your time.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Welcome to Vero Beach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George, and I hope your parents are feeling better.
Yes, they are, and they love having me here. So thank you.
With that, I'm going to close public hearing. Seeing no protests, we'll move on to the adoption of the consent agenda.
Move for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll go to ordinances and resolutions, which is 3A. The first one, get my cheat sheet out.
Water rates.
No, I understand what it is, Mrs. Turner. I have a sheet that leads me through it. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, repealing the previous adopted water and sewer rate structure and charges for services in the unincorporated areas located within the city's water and sewer utility service area, adopting an amended water and sewer rate structure and charges for such unincorporated areas, providing for an effective date requested by City Council. The first thing we go to is staff comment.
Staff on this is the rate structure that has been requested by the county in our discussions pertaining to the franchise agreement, and one of the big items was adoption of the rate structure of the county in the unincorporated areas. This is what this resolution is doing.
Before we have discussion, public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Council comment?
Move to adopt as presented.
Second.
Discussion, please.
Absolutely. Discussion.
In reviewing graphs of showing the rate differentials between the city and the county rates, it does show significant savings for county water rates in the low volumes. But as we know, the county has moved forward to try to press for conservation. So as you get over 15,000 gallons or more a month, you do start seeing a premium, and that will be picked up by the high volume users. I'd like everybody to understand that, as well, since we don't have the amount of irrigation water available in Indian River that we do in Indian River shores, that you're going to be hearing from your high water volume users will definitely see an increase in their rates. I think it's important also to look at who else this is going to affect. It's going to have a significant effect on Indian River Hospital because they are the top water users in our group, as well as, I believe, Vero Beach Elementary will be in this group of high county users. Dodgertown, I'm not sure. Is Dodgertown completely in the incorporated
Within
area?
the corporate limits.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure on that one. But at least for those two our highest water users, they're going to see a significant increase. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Further discussion?
Just a quick question. Was this a condition that the county had on their franchise agreement?
Yes, this was something that started out, and the whole beginning was to adopting of the county rates in the unincorporated areas.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was a request from the county commissioners.
Yes, sir. That was
Okay.
from the first day.
Okay, I'll call the question. Mrs. Bach?
Okay.
Go ahead, Pilar. Don't.
All right, thank you. But did we hear from the South Beach Association, South Beach Owners Associations, Mr. O'Connor?
No, we have not, and all of our discussions have taken place with the county and the county representatives, and I thought they were reflecting South Beach. I have met with the president on at least 2 occasions, and that's when there was a perception that we were 20% higher than the county rates. And in some cases, there may be somebody who was 20%, but there's going to be some that are going to be 40%.
Yeah, I appreciate the analysis. When I had asked to see the cost differential, because the backup to this, South Beach customers, it looks like if we go to convert to county rates, we will show a 4.3% increase in our revenue.
Somewhere around there. It was the GAI study, I think, was 2.1% increase in revenue. Yes.
And on the mainland, we would show a slight decrease in revenue by changing these rates.
That is correct.
Yep.
With these rates, we'll still be including our 6% franchise fee, or is there any change in that, or the 10% municipal surcharge?
No, ma'am. We dropped the municipal surcharge of the 10%, but we do include the fee in lieu of franchise fee because that is in the county rate structure.
Okay, but we're dropping it so it'll be in line with what we're doing at Indian River Shores as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That was a good clarification, Ms. Turner, that last one.
Of course, now the county does impose a 6% franchise
Yes.
fee.
Yeah, that's something we need to make sure everybody understands. That 6% is not in, and we, the city council, didn't impose that on them. The county imposed that.
That is correct. We collect that money for the county.
That's true.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to vote.
Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves? Yes. Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Ware?
Yes. All right, we move to 2, which is an ordinance of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, amending the code of the City of Vero Beach, Chapter 58, Article 2, Division 4, Police Officers Retirement Fund by amending Section 58-98 relating to compensation, Section 58-108 relating to credited service to provide compliance with the current collective bargaining agreement, providing for conflict and severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date, requested by the Police Pension Board. Staff comments.
This is in compliance with the bargaining agreement on how credit's given toward pension
All right. Public comment? Seeing none, I close public comment. Council comment?
Move to adopt as presented.
Second.
Further council discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes. All right, now we move to B. A resident of the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, requesting any and all involved government units and public agencies to require all aboard Florida and East Coast industries to pay all costs associated with all aboard Florida project and its impact on local communities, and that any governmental financial assistance to be provided to All American Florida project, if any, be only by secured loans at less than market interest rates, providing for an effective date requested by City Council. Mrs. Turner, I believe you're the author of this, are you not? And before I do that, I need to ask for staff comment.
Staff comment is that it was drawn at the request of the council, and I believe that was in conversation also with the Railroad Commission. Maybe the chairman's given me a blank look. So.
Well, actually, we took the counties and elaborated on it, working with Mrs. Turner.
Now, Mrs. Turner, we need public hearing on that. Do you want that, your comments first?
Also, just while we're in that conversation, since this was drawn up, there's been another coalition group that has been assembled that I think would like to have some input into this as well.
Why don't we have him do it? Mr. Daig, I believe it is. Daig.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Ken Daig, 1846 21st Avenue. I am your high-speed rail chairman. In your resolution, if you would include the following, please. To my knowledge, the county had asked for an additional comment time, and I think they asked for an additional 90 days, which would be 180 days for when the EIS study is open, that we have that additional time. And the EIS, that's the EIS hearing, Environmental Impact Study. And also, I would ask you to include in your resolution, to my knowledge right now, they do not plan on having a hearing here in this county. And I would ask that you would please include that in this resolution. We have had a number of meetings at the High Speed Rail Commission. We've heard from our county friends, city friends. We have many, many concerns here in this county, and would be most helpful if they have a hearing here. And with that being said, if you wanted to assign a number to that, you're going to probably have hundreds of people step up. And if you shuffle us up to another community, we're going to have to wait forever to step up and speak. So if you would include that into the resolution, that would be helpful. Also, when you send out the resolution, I would ask you to make sure all parties involved would know. I have an ongoing list of people that we've been contacting at the state level, the Washington level, and throughout the county. So I'll give that list to the city clerk that you can take a look at to include when you do your mail out. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Fine.
Mr. Daig, stay there a minute. And Mrs. Turner, you may have questions of Mr. Daig.
No, I certainly agree that it's a great idea to extend the EIS time and to ask for a local forum. And probably amending, I was thinking of doing it in a separate document, but amending this resolution and bringing it forward next time would certainly be acceptable. I think it probably would be more powerful put in the resolution itself, or we could make an additional resolution, but...
It would be very powerful if it's included in this, because other cities, other counties can see what we're doing. And when you see my mailing list, all will get it, and they can see the position. As you know, many politicians are doing an about-face on this. They're not happy with this, and we need to stand strong with one strong voice.
My only concern is do feel some sense of urgency to go ahead and complete a resolution. It may not be perfect, or maybe come back and next time and do an additional resolution of the EIS. I don't know what council feels, but
my thing is this: we have to be granted the extra time on the EIS study. And my question is this: who grants us the extra time? And time is of the essence. We get together, I think, and the city manager can address this Thursday when they're doing some type of walkthrough, and this was put together right quick. So if you possibly can get this resolution out to start making an impact that's important, they may come back and deny our time. But if we all stand together throughout the region and say, look, we need more time to make our comments, so if you folks can get this done, the sooner the better.
Mr. Comet, could we be able to make that amendment to the resolution and still be able to pass it through this evening? Or you feel it too significantly changes the content of it?
It is an administrative matter, but it probably be safer to bring it back.
I think that if we look at what we've done in the past, we passed previous resolutions very quickly, almost knee-jerk. And I think it's more powerful if we have a resolution that has all of these issues in it. And while there is urgency for time, I don't think one more meeting in May to give all of these concerns time to get in there would be such a bad idea, just to make sure that we're standing firm and standing strong, and we're not having to constantly come up with new resolutions every 2 weeks, every few weeks.
Yeah, I concur in that. Having learned my position could be improved, quite frankly.
It would be
Thank you, Mr. Decker.
most helpful.
And we have the possibility that we could find that this one should be improved also.
Can you have the city manager go into the meeting for Thursday that you're going to get together on for the?
Yes, sir. Myself and Monty Falls will be there. There's an issue if you go as a member of the High Speed Rail Commission or a city council. There's a sunshine issue if you two or more people show up and there could be a conflict. I believe the latest that came out from the MPO was that they were trying to do this on the staff level.
Okay. Thank you.
But Monty and I both of us plan to be there.
Okay, thanks.
So is it the consensus that we'll bring it back accordingly at the next meeting? Is that?
I think we'll still continue to open for public comment, Mr. Mayor, to see what other comments we have and then amend the resolution.
That's fine. Further public comment? Mr. Lamson?
Mr. Lamson.
Hi, I'm Dan Lamson, the director of the IRNA. We get around. And I just want to encourage you to take up what Mr. Daig said. That is, I think they're very sensible, changes to the resolution. And one strong resolution from the city would be pretty good. Sebastian just recently passed a pretty strong resolution as well, and I would encourage you to take a look at that and see if there's anything else you might want to add.
I requested it for everybody. So
great.
Thank you.
And so just, it's a very fast-moving issue, which is appropriate for fast-moving trains, I guess. And, we're keeping an eye on it, and if we hear anything, we'll let you know. I think I emailed all of you our position on it that we just passed recently at our board meeting, and thank you for, taking these steps, and good job.
Thank you.
With that said, I think with a consensus, we can move it to the next step. Is that agreeable?
Agree that we will modify it to include the EIS and extend for 90-day review and a local hearing. And I'd say, why don't we go ahead and ask for 120 days? I mean, they cut it back anyway.
I think the county may have done that.
I think the county went for 120. Let's go ahead and ask for the max.
Well, why don't you remain in point on it? You have
if you could continue to work with Peggy on it.
I will do
and
so.
I'll give her the Sebastian and also the...
Which I just received. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, have we ever done like a joint resolution with the county and the other cities?
One of the things the coalition, I attended that meeting today, is it is going to have an elected representative from both Indian River Shores. Sebastian, Andrea Coy, and her city manager were there today. The city manager or Monty Falls will be newsflash. You will be joining at those, and so it gives us a collective place where we can have our resolutions in line with each other and have a unified voice going forward on this, which will give us strength in numbers.
Yeah, that's my concern. At the federal level, they could just see a small town resolution and pitch it pretty quick.
And that's what we're trying to achieve, is that we're all coming together on this, and so that there's identical. I mean, we'll all have individual concerns respective to our communities, but as a whole, these are our concerns in general.
Okay. All right. I guess that moves us to City Clerk's matters, Mrs. Bach.
I just have one item. Attached are the annual reports from the different cities commissions that we have. These were presented to you at our February meeting, But since we have two new commissions, the Utility Commission and the High Speed Rail Commission, I have attached those and given them to you along with the other reports.
Is there a comment from council?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the thorough
Very good job.
reports.
So I guess they're accepted. Is that correct?
Accepted.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll move on to city manager's meetings. He's got 4 items to start with before we start asking questions.
Yes. One of those is a review of properties for the charter protection. As the council knows, we've been working with Ms. Graves and Ken Daig to come up with and identify city properties that we would have a referendum in November to include in the charter. We're also cleaning up some of our park descriptions. You'll notice that we've redrawn the lines, which you will be doing probably by resolution to rename the parks, so it's much easier to read. We're taking out that date that's in the charter right now and trying to put it all under the same auspices that everybody can identify what parks are there. Tonight, we're giving this information to you to sort of review. We'll bring back the ordinance. It'll require an ordinance change, an ordinance at the next council meeting to adopt these to place on the referendum for a vote for a charter amendment. Mr. Daig has identified another piece of ground that's across from the, well, Ken, why don't you get up? You can tell them what it is. It's across from the community theater that they use for parking now, but the city owns the property.
Ken Daig, 1846 21st Avenue. There was another piece. I think you all got a map today. Not a map, a piece of ground. When you turn to the south from where we have the Theater Guild, there's a big piece of property there a number of years ago. It was used when they were building the county building as a parking lot, but we, the city, we own it. So that was something else that I found for your consideration to also include that under the protection. Thank you.
And the staff has no objection to that if you want to include that as the parcel of land. It will be used as parking for the theater for any foreseeable future, and that builds into the use, which is a permitted use under the charter. Now, if the Theater Guild goes away and somebody else does something else with that property, then it changes the use, but as parking for the Theater Guild. And even if the Theater Guild wanted to lease the property, it'd be similar to the dog park. It would be a permitted use.
What is our next step on this, Jim?
For you all to review that, we're going to bring forward the ordinance at the next council meeting for your consideration.
Well, don't get ahead of yourself. I'm going to do the drafting. We would be bringing that. We have plenty of time because this would be the November election. We would be bringing you back an ordinance. Has to have 2 readings, a first reading and a public hearing. And we would be identifying, obviously, the properties that have been specified unless you tell us there's something on there you don't want included. Well, that's the list we would be bringing back to incorporate it into the charter restrictions having to do with sale or lease of the property.
Now, my question is, wouldn't we be addressing the names here? Don't we have to officially adopt the names before we adopt them into the charter?
Yes. In fact, that may be a good point. We may want to do that first by resolution, identify better the boundaries of the particular parks before they're added in here.
Okay, right.
And obviously, we work with Public Works and the city surveyor on that.
Mr. Boucher, you're standing there. Your comments, please.
Yes, Mark Mucher again. That last item that you just added made me think, I didn't go through the whole list, but it seems like you're adding all surplus property. It doesn't make any sense to require a referendum on that parking lot if the city were to decide that it didn't need it anymore. That's one item. I don't know if there's any other non-park, non-important pieces of land on the list. A second item I wanted to ask you about when you're cleaning up this charter requirement issue for the parks has to do with the addition of the power plant and the sewer plant land. When that referendum was put on the ballot and passed, the enabling minutes and ordinance for that talked about that a referendum would only be required if there was a change of use. Now, y'all remember the first referendum to lease the power plant to Florida Power and Light. I contend that that was not required because the intent of that referendum was it would be required if there was a change of use. And it obviously wasn't a change of use. It's a power plant now. It's a power plant. It'll be a power plant after you lease it. So that shouldn't have ever gone to referendum. But we had a city attorney who didn't always, dot all the I's and cross all the T's in putting that into the charter. And so I hope you'll take that opportunity to clean that up at this
you can bring
opportunity.
you can bring your comments forward at the next. If you would like this copy of,
No, I have a copy.
you have a copy. Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes, sir. As corrected by the city attorney, I guess the resolutions will come next for the description of the park and the renaming of the park before we get to the ordinance. And I hope he does realize there's 3 weeks between now and the next meeting, so we should have plenty of time.
Yeah.
So that's forward you're going to take, just so.
Yes, sir. And please, if after you read this, if you have comments, a partial that you don't believe needs to be in there, just let us know, and we'll make the exceptions and make sure everybody's aware of it.
Well, obviously, what we'll do is, unless you have one now you want to pull off, we're going to put them all in there, and then council can discuss it and amend it as you see fit.
Considering the hour, there are some things that I would like to review, but I will undo that later.
Fair.
Yeah, we'll get the descriptions of the parks and what have you, try to get that straightened out first, and then.
This was more of an informational document
Okay.
to let you know as we're proceeding down, but the next will require action of the council.
All right, I believe we've covered that. What is your next issue?
Discussion about an outside counsel and FMPA negotiations. We would like to be able to extend the contract of Chef Wright, who is the attorney we've been using in Tallahassee. He brings experience with the utility background, but at the same time, he has had interaction with the cities. He has also been on the other side of the table with FP&L, but I have talked to Pat Bryan with FP&L about working with him. He respects him as an attorney, but I think he also has worked very closely with the Florida League of Cities. One of the things we're going to have to do at the end of the day is that we're going to have to get the cities to sign these waivers, and he has had a lot of interaction with most of the cities on FMPA, and I think he can add some credibility to what we're doing in the process.
Okay.
What's he cost?
It's about $225 an hour, and we would utilize him in these efforts to review all of the contracts and use him to call the meeting. Now, the John Igo and Rick Miller firm will still be in place. All the historic documents that they have, I've talked to John Igo about this, and Seth Wright would be their guy in Tallahassee, but also take this process and try to get to the contract negotiations and the regulatory issues that we have to address. So all parties are aware of what we're doing.
Sounds good.
Public comment, Mr. Wilson.
I am still Mr. Wilson. Thank you.
Absolutely, you're Mr. Wilson.
Yes. A couple of things. This is a partial answer to your question as to what we were doing checking out attorneys. Has Mr. Igo, you say, has he weighed in on this selection of an attorney to assist him, and has he requested this? Or, frankly, sir, is this a request from FMPA to move the legal team that we've had in place aside so that the FMPA can deal with somebody that's more friendly to them?
FMPA did not recommend this attorney. They have made it very clear that they have some issues with our transactional attorneys. And again, it's an obstacle in the way that I feel like that we can sit around and beat on that one for another 6 months, or we find a solution to the problem. Solution to the problem is that we would have this. John Igo knows who I was going to be recommending tonight, and did have advance notice and knew that the concept that I was envisioning is that Seth Wright would be his man that would be working, but also going back to John Igo and giving reports and that kind of stuff.
Is Mr. Wright, has he had experience, has he represented FMPA and FMPA cities in the past against FPNL?
He has, in rate cases.
Yeah, I'll tell you who his main client is. It's the Retail Federation of Florida, and he represents them in front of the PSC. He's a former PSC attorney. He's very versed in power purchase agreements and these kind of contracts, which is something we've been, quite frankly, been missing, is someone that is knowledgeable in utilities. And if anybody can work out what needs to be in these waivers that the FMPA is going to require of our contracts, the various provisions and restrictions that have to be waived, he's the guy that can do it. I feel confident he is. And as far as working out a new, updated assignment agreement for Vero Beach to assign its contracts to OUC, he's very capable in that regard. Because the agreements as they stand are not acceptable to FMPA because they were not consulted on what needed to be in those agreements.
I'm not actually questioning, just like earlier, I'm not actually questioning someone's capabilities. I'm just very curious about their motives. And so when we do something that just says, well, why don't we have this other attorney look into these things? I just think it's important in the connect the dots section that we at least recognize publicly that we're doing this in part to appease the FMPA and get past some of their objections. So I don't know who this gentleman is. There's no backup to show what his requirements are. I don't know, frankly, if this was one of the attorneys that was recommended by the FMPA. I have no idea. So I just don't know. I would like to take just a second, if you don't mind. I'd like to give a little bit of comfort to my friend, Mr. Christopher. I have the list of his phone calls here, and it is very much redacted. So if Mr. Christopher says he's made 3 calls instead of 100, I take him at his word because it's all redacted out here. There's a list of phone numbers. He at least said that he has made a number of other calls to the FMPA. I don't know if it has to do with this attorney or not. So we have established that there were calls made. I understand how he feels when he feels like somebody has gotten the information incorrect. I feel that way every time I read Inside Vero. So I understand exactly how he feels. So if it would give him some comfort to say that this list that was provided by Mr. Christopher and most of it is redacted, if he says that it is to be read as having 3 calls and then he's made subsequent calls, I just want to clear the record that I take him at his word, and we can go on for that. But it is bothersome. One of the things that I was going to do earlier when I was connecting the dots is I was going to predict that at some point there were several steps that were going to be made. And one of those steps is going to be to move aside the transactional attorney. And if that's what's happening, and last meeting, somebody asked me if I had faith in Jim O'Connor, and I didn't get a chance to answer that. I have complete faith in what the city manager is doing and the job that he is doing and his negotiations and his work on behalf of our community. If you tell me that what this is necessary to move the sale forward, then I'm going to believe you. But it sure doesn't look without some measure of
Charlie, just to
difficulty.
give you a little depth, Seth Wright has represented the city, Chef with an S. Chef Wright has represented the city for several years in Tallahassee over other issues. And Chef also represented us, for example, on the Debbie Mayfield. But historically speaking, has represented us on several of those issues. So it's not a name that is new to the city of Vero Beach. It is one that has been used.
The problem is we don't know what his positions are on some of the issues as we advocating for us. And I'll give you an example. We just had a situation where we had a member, I will go nameless, before the Utilities Commission that indicated that he had had conversation with bond attorneys and that he agreed with the bond attorneys from FMPA. Well, it's not. He did not say anything about the fact that FP&L's bond attorneys and our bond attorneys disagreed with the FMPA bond attorney. And so the question is, if we're going to have another lawyer working for us, we pretty much should figure out what he stands for and what his interpretation is and whether he's going to fight for us or if he's going to be one of the reasons that we've gone from a done deal to a dead deal in 5 months.
Mr. Wilson, thanks for your comments, your gracious comments on the other subject, and so on. I appreciate that because you and I have had our back and forth, but in the final analysis, we've all got to work to get this done. And thanks for your comments. I appreciate them.
I wish him well, and I forgive him.
And forgive me if I was rude to you.
You are forgiven.
Thank you, sir.
Mark Mucher again. A couple of things on this lawyer appointment. I think previous lawyers were interviewed by the council. I don't know if there's a time consideration or constraint on that. That might be a good idea. We might learn something about him as he sees himself being involved in this transaction as opposed to the other work he's done for the city. I know it's not a new name. I've heard the name many times. I find it a little hard to believe that he might not have a conflict of interest with having possibly worked for any of the cities that belong to, that are members of the FMPA. And then the third concern I have is you say, well, he's only $225 an hour, but he's going to be working with John Igo, who's $500 an hour. Now, if John Igo has to bring him up to speed or answer questions or whatever, now we're paying $725 an hour that we either wouldn't have had to pay anything at all or we would have paid $500 for. When he gets off on his own after some period, if that's going to be the case, of course, this has all got to be coordinated. And I don't know why you'd use him on the OUC contract, but he might result in a cost savings when he's on his own, but we don't know when, if ever, that's going to be. So I'd make those three points to you.
Well, Chef Wright would be very happy to come to the city council, and we can arrange for him to do that. Would not be a problem. The key is that it was a familiar name. He has represented cities in the FMPA, which I was looking at as a benefit. Rick Miller also represented cities in the FMPA, so we were. That conflict I don't think really existed or has been an issue with us. But if we're going to get across and get to 19 other cities, we're going to have somebody that has some familiarity in that area.
So you need somebody from Tallahassee, and there's a lot you could say about this, but I tend to want to support the city manager and the city attorney in this,
Mr. Mayor,
and move forward. But anyway,
I certainly would like to have the opportunity, first of all, to review a resume, Mr. Wright. I also feel that there's clearly a potential for conflict, that his career has been in support of municipal power. And here we are clearly trying to make a break from being a municipal electric company. And that does concern me. And also seeing a clear scope of what exactly he would be involved with and a clear budget were things I would like to see before we could reconsider this.
I would like to make a comment. All the time, every meeting, everyone comes up here and says, let's get this done at any cost, any cost. And now when we have this possibility of moving forward, we're panicking. I guess it's, do we do it at any cost? Do we get somebody who's the FMPA is willing to work with to move us forward? I I just don't see, our hands are kind of tied. If no one's willing to meet, what do we do? And if this person is going to bring people to the table and meet and allow a conduit of information from FMPA to go over to John Igo to take to FPL and we can start routing this correctly, I mean, do you have a better solution at this point?
No question solution. Like I said, I was obviously questioning that I wanted more information. And I object that I am now being concerned with costs because I have always been concerned with costs, Ms. Graves, if you'll check my record.
Well, we picked one of the most expensive attorneys, so...
Certainly, but I've always been concerned with costs.
And the least experienced, too, by the way, I might add.
Mr. Kramer, what's your view since you started talking?
Well, it's up to you guys. Quite frankly, if you want the deal to go south, you keep the transactional attorneys that you have. They've done a fantastic job of making a mess of this stuff. I've said it over and over again. Have at it. It's up to you guys whether you want to get something done or not.
Mr. Fletcher.
I'm going to support the city manager on this. We need to go ahead.
Yeah, I am too.
Me
so
too.
do you want to vote on it or what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's call it.
Yeah, but no, wait a second. You got public comment and we haven't had public comment.
Just, Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up question, and this might be incorrect premise, but if FMPA has an issue with the current attorney, I believe that's why there's a need for a new attorney, do we have quantified, documented what are the issues with the current attorney so that the new attorney fits the requirements so that this issue doesn't come up again? Has that been communicated, documented, or is it just a vague issue?
It is an unquantifiable issue that the FMPA has chosen not to meet with our transactional attorneys. Okay, in order to get the next meeting, we're going to have to find an option. This is the option. And I did talk to our transactional attorneys about this. And this is a valid option because they're interested in it moving forward as well.
Correct. And that seems reasonable to me that if there are steps to move the transaction forward, again, my concern is coming in and looking at this from the outside, coming in and keep seeing the history, that this is another potential area where you're going to have vague requirements that are not able to be met. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, can you make it brief?
I've got 30 seconds, I know.
Thank you, sir.
Two things. This is what we're talking about. What we're revealing now is that the real reason we're doing this is because FMPA won't deal with the other attorney and they want to move forward. And if that's the reason, then any reasonable person would say, if this is what we got to do. At the same time, this is like with having a divorce and your wife's or husband's divorce attorney saying, I don't like your attorney, so I'm not dealing with you and you can't bring him along, so I'm going to pick an attorney for you, and I'm going to tell you who to negotiate, and I'm going to tell you who to bring to the settlement table. So we keep asking FMPA like we're some Oliver Twist movie where we go up and say, please, sir, could I have some more? When there are other alternative ways for us to negotiate out of strength. And I think we're probably going to be moving towards that. But now that you've explained to me, what you're really saying to me is we need another attorney or we're not getting this meeting and we're not going forward. And that's been directed by the FMPA. I understand that. So it's unfortunate. It's something that I estimated would happen. The problem is the question is, are we getting an attorney that's going to represent us or are we getting an attorney that's going to represent them? And that's the real issue. Because if we move it forward and they're representing them, all these people that are scared of FMPA getting mad at us, what else can they do to us? We're already hostages for life. What else can they do? So, what difference if they're mad at us or not? So it could be that what we need is a meaner attorney to go talk to FMPA instead of one that they choose. So it's just a matter, if you're telling me that that's what we need for the next meeting, I understand that. But it's fraught with disaster, and we should all understand exactly why we're doing it. The reason we're doing it is because FMPA is demanding it. I believe it's another delaying tactic, and we'll see that again, and pretty soon we're going to go a different direction. Thank you.
Mr. Stradley, your comments, please.
Thank you very much. Scott Stradley, 1797 14th Avenue. I'm concerned, and I was concerned when the FNPA at the April 2nd meeting and said we can't bring our transactional attorney along. Our transactional attorney is our attorney. They represent us. They are organic to our negotiations. And I find it very troubling that we allow someone that we're negotiating with to dictate who we can and cannot bring to represent us. And going forward, the comment was made tonight by one city council person and also by the city manager that the FNPA doesn't want to work with this transactional attorney. If we have a problem with the job they've done, then that's our problem with our attorney. We need to deal with that. But to have someone we're negotiating with state who we can or cannot bring as our representative is just unconscionable. And I'm very disappointed that the city has acceded to that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments. Further comments? Do we need a vote on this? Do we need what?
Mr. Mayor, I would like you to have a vote on it.
Okay.
Just so
I make a motion to adopt or to support the city manager's position.
I have a vote in a second. I'll call the question. Mrs. Vach, let's do it.
With no budget.
With no budget.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
No.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes.
We will get the resume out to all the mayor and the council.
Well, one other comment, though. I think it's a valid request of Mrs. Turner to have Mr. Wright come before us.
We will do that.
I think that's a very valid comment.
Now, he is located in Tallahassee, correct?
That is correct.
So that's a 12-hour round trip
He has
we'll be charged
volunteered to
for.
come down here. He has no objection to that.
Also, Wayne, get his resume for us, please.
Sure.
Jim, do you got two more?
After the fact.
Next item is the changing of hours for alcohol sales. This primarily is to address some commercialization in our areas. It started on 14th Avenue, but as you see the signatures on the back, it really spread across the city. I've talked to the police chief, also talked to the planning director. We have no objection and would endorse changing the hour unless there's some objection by the city council. We will bring forward an ordinance that would change the 1 o'clock time frame to 2 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. But from Chief Curry, we didn't feel like there was any significant problem. No. Fine. Thank you.
You're just,
for that, I'm great.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, some people will drink till about 1 o'clock in Vero and then either head north or south. Because
True, make it on the roads and it's even worse. Yeah.
So maybe we'll capture them in their one location.
I
move forward.
I don't buy into the whole thing. I leave it the way it is. We got enough drunks on the road. Get them off by 1.
Well, that was an interesting question. I talked to a police officer about that. He said that was kind of the issue, is that they go from 1 o'clock here, and then they drive to Fort Pierce or Brevard, drink another hour, and then they drive back home.
So they're on the roads longer.
They're on the roads longer, but this is an ordinance thing. If it doesn't work, we can change it back. But I'd like to get them off the road and not driving around.
We will move the ordinance forward for the council's consideration.
Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Fletcher?
No, I'm not going to vote for it. I can't support it.
That's a fair comment.
Could we ask that when we do bring the ordinance forward, if Chief Curry would be available? Love for him to address the issue. Thank you.
Not a problem.
That's a good suggestion also. All right, establishment of audit committee.
Yes, our recommendation is that we have the council refer to the Finance Commission the appointment of a minimum of 3 people for the audit committee. That we have to go out for RFPs for auditors going forward, and this audit committee would make a recommendation back to the city council. But the first step is the Finance Commission needs to appoint 3 or 4 members. We'll put that in the form of a resolution for the council to consider.
Yeah, we would need to form the audit committee first, and then there would be names suggested to you for appointment.
How do they do this under the Sunshine Law?
They
have to do it at their meetings.
They have to do it in meetings. It's a publicized meeting.
Just a question. I do recall having served on the Finance Commission, and the audit was brought, the RFP for the audit and the whole discussion was brought to the whole Finance Commission. I'm not understand why we're setting up a separate
I think it's
commission
a
for audit.
statutory requirement.
Yeah.
We've
been doing it incorrect all that time, and now we're going to do it properly. I don't know.
I saw what was done last time. The statute is very specific for selection of an auditor, more so than any other kind of RFP process. It could be the entire Finance Committee, but the Audit Committee itself is a separate entity. I think what happened last time is everyone on the Finance Commission wanted to be on the Audit Committee, and that was great.
I don't believe it quite worked that way.
But the Audit Committee has to be a separate committee established formally by you, separate Sunshine Law meetings. It's a separate single-purpose committee for a period of time. I was just suggesting the minimum of 3 because it is a lot of extra work.
It is.
And there are a number of our Finance Commission members who've gone above and beyond and served on other committees throughout the last 6 or 8 months. If all of them don't want to do it, at least if they could come up with at least 3. So.
No, I think that's a great solution. Thank you so much, Ms. Leslie, for clarifying that.
But the resolution adopting the audit committee has to have the particular names of the people in it, and that's the reason it would come back.
I think 3 is the proper number.
I say move forward.
Yeah, I say move forward,
We will
too.
move forward. Are there any questions from the council or
No.
any issues? All right. Thank you very much.
City attorney matters.
Nothing else? Unless you have a question about anything.
All right, city council members, I will be absent the country for the next 17 or 18 days, so Mr. Kramer will, I guess, be signing documents. Is that correct, Mrs. Bach?
Yes, sir.
And I won't call any meetings either.
And you have the ability to call me.
Trust me, I won't.
Call one while I'm not here. That'll be great. Mr. Kramer.
I'll try to be quick with this. The Hibiscus Festival was on this weekend. The downtown Main Street group did a wonderful job. It was kind of sorry to see the chalk art kind of go under the tire, but that was a new thing this year, and it really turned out quite fabulous. Got a letter from Under the Oaks people. They donated $850 from the proceeds from Under the Oaks to the bringing art to the children of our community. And so I just want to say a big thank you to Mary Ellen Kozer of the Vero Beach Art Club. We really appreciate that. Also attended, I believe it was the 55th Easter egg hunt out on the beach. Lots of kids running around finding eggs, although it probably wasn't that hard if you were there and saw it. But it was really fascinating to see the children absolutely excited. I just has a question. Did any of the other council members go to Storm Grove to do their?
Yes, I did.
Yes, we did.
Storm Grove.
Okay. I won't go to. I'll let you guys talk on that because it was actually a really fascinating experience.
You did it entirely differently than I did. I did a lecture, and you did it Socratic. And I think your way was better than mine.
Well, my way was really question and answer. I mean, typically what I do is I go around the room, I find out what they're excited about, and then I go through the process. For an example, they wanted to have an amusement park in Indian River County, or like a water park, and I thought, well, hey, next agenda item. But I went through and told them how they would go about doing that, and actually got them pretty excited about doing that. Finally, a lot of us attended the Buggy Bunch dedication of a shade structure there at J.C. Park. I can tell you in the summer it's really going to make a difference, especially with the kids that just refuse to come indoors and keep playing out in the sun. That's it.
Yeah. And I have to agree with the mayor as far as approach with 7th graders. It's been a long time since I was a 7th grader. And I struggle a little bit with relating. So I could tell these people with young parents and a young councilwoman that would be a little bit closer to the kids' age. But it was great to see them having an interest in civics and getting some idea that local government counts and it's the closest to you. So that was wonderful. Back on the Buggy Bench, just to thank Kathy and Tim Modesta with State Farm, who helped the Buggy Bench get the grant. And it is going to be a great addition for our community. Went to the United Way function at the Vero Beach Country Club. I had a chance to chat with the new chairs for Gosh, 2014, 15, it's hard to imagine that. For next year, Mike and Leslie Swan, I know they'll have a great challenge ahead of them since this year we had a record donations to United Way, but I know everybody will be out there to give them a hand, and with their energy and support, bound to be successful. The Sun Up Ark had a groundbreaking ceremony for a new 6-bed facility. Those of you who don't know Sun Up Ark, it's a facility, they have a daycare and a facility for people with disabilities. And you know, it's something I guess most of the time you don't think too much about. But while I was there was a father of 2 children with disabilities. The gentleman was in his late 70s, spoke of having spent a lifetime taking care of these children. Now he and his wife, the health are both failing. He was suffering with lung cancer. And he said, you know, what happens to my children? Where do they go? You know, at first I thought this facility was with people who didn't want to care of their kids at home or bother with them. But to see just the turmoil and suffering of this poor man thinking about what's going to happen to his children, where would they go, where would they be safe and being taken care of. It was wonderful to see Sun Up Ark being able to start with this 6-bed facility and knowing that they'd have a place to go. Hibiscus Festival, I had the pleasure of judging the Harvest Food Cart Parade. Once again, first prize winner was Marine Bank and Trust with the Pelican Dynasty. And it was something to see. Not only was Pelican Pete out there, but all the Marine Bank employees with their beards on and in good Duck Dynasty, but this time Pelican Dynasty stage. So that was wonderful. Want to remind everybody we have Arbor Day coming up on Friday the 25th. Once again, the city of Vero Beach is being honored as a tree city. It'll be at 10 o'clock at Charles Park. They'll be planting a tree there. Also on April the 26th, that Saturday, that's the day of service. Go ahead and check it's www.ircdayofservice.com if you want to register online, or if not, just show up. I'm sorry, it's
.org.
Thank you very much, Amelia. .org. Yes, there's somebody still awake out there. Okay. .org. Or show up at Dillard's at the mall at 8 o'clock on the 26th. And there are tickets now available for Ocean Drive's Taste of Vero, and that's at 5:30 to 8:30 on Wednesday the 23rd. If you haven't been out to this, it's wonderful. There are limited tickets. There's a chance to try all different varieties of food. Thank you.
Ms. Graves.
I attended Storm Grove, and it was really great. The kids, I think it was exciting for them to see how much goes into running a city and local government. I had the privilege of judging Miss Hibiscus for the Hibiscus Festival, and there's no words will do justice the quality of participants that came out. Their community service resumes are maybe 9 or 8 point font and fill up an entire page. Caitlin Ruby, who won Miss Hibiscus, is just a stellar example of what we have in this community, and she could and probably will be president of the United States someday. So there's a lot of pride in who competed for Miss Hibiscus this year, and I was really, really happy to have the privilege of meeting these young ladies. So,
Mr. Fletcher.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second, and we're adjourned.
All right.